Your opening thoughts on where you're sitting at the National Security Council thinking about these issues.
Great, thank you very much. And I was going to correct that because I can't discredit my alma mater, Vanderbilt, if there's any doors in the room. So thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And a big thanks to the Harvard Global Health Institute for convening this Outbreak Week and convening this symposium today. This is an incredibly important opportunity to come together and discuss options that we have for the future to reduce these risks. So today I've been asked to speak about the policy and strategy development work that the US government has done as it relates to biodefense and global health security. So my comments will be mostly focused on that, and I look forward to the discussion if there's any further questions. So first, let me start by saying that we believe that strategies are important and that strategies should empower implementation. Biological threats, whether they are deliberate, accidental, or naturally occurring, are among the most serious threats to U.S. national security. And I don't need to tell this audience this audience knows it very well. Infectious disease threats do not respect borders and in our interconnected world can spread rapidly independent of origin. Biological threats are a distinct aspect of national security and require a focused and systematic approach to reducing risks. It's a vital interest of the United States government to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from biological threats. In December of 2017, the White House released a national security strategy which calls for combating biological threats and pandemics. There are 3 priority actions underneath this particular end state, and they are detecting and countering biological threats at the source, so global health security, supporting biomedical innovation, and improving emergency response, which entails domestically understanding and characterizing the outbreak to limit the spread of disease. I highlight the national security strategy in this form in particular for 2 reasons. One, the national security strategy articulates the U.S. government view that health security is national security, and 2, by including it in the national security strategy, it indicates that protecting health security is a national security priority. I'll now turn to the most recently released strategy, which is our national biodefense strategy. On September 18th, 2018, so just last week, the White House released the National Biodefense Strategy and its implementation plan. And the President signed a National Security Presidential Memorandum, which is a presidential directive on support for biodefense. And biodefense in this context is defined very broadly, that looks at actions to counter biological threats and reduce risks and includes global health security and domestic health security. The biodefense strategy identifies 5 goals. The first is to assess biological risks. The second is to ensure capabilities to prevent biological incidents. The third is to prepare to reduce the impacts of biological incidents. And the fourth is to respond rapidly to biological incidents. And then the 5th and final goal is recovering after biological incidents. This strategy integrates the activities of more than 15 departments and agencies, and it's comprehensive in 4 different ways. The first is that by threat, it for the first time encompasses naturally occurring, accidental, and deliberate biological threats, bringing those into one comprehensive strategy. The second is by target, it addresses threats to humans, to animals, to plants, and to the environment. The third is that by geography, it looks both here domestically in the United States, but also internationally. As we know, biological threats are borderless threats. 4, by discipline, the strategy takes a multi-sectoral approach and addresses different sectors, including health, law enforcement, defense and security, emergency response, science and technology, and others. Included in the annex of the National Biodefense Strategy is its implementation plan, as I mentioned. And the implementation plan provides granularity for the objectives and the goals and describes in greater detail the actions that the U.S. government will take to strengthen its biodefense. And for this audience in particular, I encourage you to look at the implementation plan because that's where the meat of the descriptions are on the different actions. Also, I mentioned that the President signed a National Security Presidential Memorandum. And this presidential directive directs the execution of the strategy and the execution of the implementation plan. And further, it lays out a framework for coordinating the broader biodefense enterprise. I'll go through the structure and I'll go through the annual process, and then I'll get to the so what does it mean? Because I think it is really, we are hoping to create something that's responsive to some of the things that you heard Dennis raise, that you heard Mike raise, and that you heard Dr. Fauci raise this morning. So the structure is as follows. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Azar, is designated as the federal lead for coordinating implementation of the strategy. The Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, who is my boss, the National Security Advisor, is the lead for coordination and integration of policy for all biodefense efforts. The presidential directive also creates a principal level, so cabinet secretary level, biodefense coordination steering committee, biodefense steering committee, which includes 8 cabinet officials. And then there's also a team created within the Department of Health and Human Services to support those principals and those cabinet officials. The Biodefense Steering Committee and the Biodefense Coordination Team have a mandate to reach outside the federal government to non-governmental stakeholders, including academia, international organizations, international partners, and to ensure their activities are coordinated with the broader federal government activities. There's also the annual process. The annual process, I won't describe it in detail, but it does a few things. It's tailored to understand what the U.S. government is doing to counter biological risks, to assess if those activities are meeting the goals as defined in the strategy, and then to annually determine what our policy priorities are and link this policy prioritization process to the annual budget. And so what? What's the significance of this strategy, and why did we put this out and go to the trouble? So first and foremost, I think what you're seeing is an elevation of biodefense and priority. You heard numerous panelists here today talk about why don't we give biological threats the same attention that we give other actions. I think what you're seeing here is an elevation of this in priority. Second, for the first time, we do have, and we've established a federal lead, which again is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, for the comprehensive strategy and coordinating these actions. And then third, it gets at, the strategy and the process gets at annually analyzing the gaps in preparedness across the U.S. government, and then developing policy priorities to close those gaps. And so you heard Dr. Fauci this morning talk about biological threats or perpetual threats. He said emerging infections, but I'll expand those to all biological threats. You heard Mike talk about distinguishing between a pandemic and an epidemic. You heard Dennis talk about our inadequate response toolbox. What we're trying to do with this strategy is create a structure to understand what we're doing, understand what we're not doing, and then prioritize our actions accordingly in the years to come. Thank you.